He didn't hear the last 3 bullet points on the quarterly deck. He didn't need to. The numbers were fine, good, even. Market share up. Margins stable. Expansion on track. Whatever that meant anymore. What he did hear was the silence people tried to cover with business words, the way the room held its breath whenever he shifted in his chair. The way eyes flicked toward him like they were waiting to see if the king would blink. Ryan Cooper didn't blink. Not in boardrooms. Not when his surname sat on the glass behind him. The migraine had started as a pinprick of light at the edge of his vision, an annoying glitter fly he could swat later. He told himself to keep going. People who ran empires did not stop slides for headaches. He had learned early that power was performance, the steady voice, the still hands, the restraint. His father used to say real leaders never flinched. Ryan wondered when that saying had become a curse. By slide 17, the pinprick fractured into a sheet of white. Someone was talking about synergies in the lifestyle vertical. He tried to focus on the voice, anchor himself to the floor under his shoes, the oak table, the soft whir of the HVAC as June heat pressed against the glass walls. But the world tilted. The table edge was suddenly farther away than it should have been. The fluorescent fixtures ghosted into 3. He reached for water that wasn't where he left it and touched empty air. A chair scraped. Papers rustled. His name, Mr. Cooper, floated from the far end of the room, cautious and too bright. He felt his palm slide against the lacquered oak, fingers splay for balance. Air thinned. He tasted copper. Don't. Not here. Not with them watching. Another voice. Do you need? It stopped, clipped by a different tone, amused and just a shade too loud. Lucas. Of course, Lucas. Half brother, half smile. Perhaps my brother is being dramatic. We can reconvene. A few chuckles that weren't laughter, just little knives people threw when they wanted to be on the right side of a moment. Ryan straightened. The room steadied by degrees. He willed his voice to work, cool and slow. We're done. A pause. Send me the deck. He didn't look at Lucas. He didn't need to. The glass door whooshed open, and the corridor swallowed the meeting's synchronized exhale. In the private elevator, he leaned against the mirrored wall and watched a version of himself he recognized but didn't fully know. Tailored suit, immaculate tie. Jawline that made magazine photographers ask for profile shots. But the eyes told the truth he refused to name out loud. Green, tired, haunted. He thought of his father in the last years, how the old man's hand trembled only when he believed no one could see it. How he would say, "Legacy is a house you keep painting because people remember the color." The car slid into the underground lot. The driver climbed out before the tires stopped. "Sir." He opened the rear door, face composed, trained to be a blank page in any crisis. Ryan nodded, climbed in, and gave an address he hated that he knew by heart. Not his penthouse. Not the office doctors kept for executive wellness. The place under the places. The clinic where no one got a last name until you were too important to be anonymous. The MRI's thrum felt like being inside a beehive. He kept his eyes closed, counted to 100, opened them, counted backwards from 100, thought about the Q3 roadmap, then thought about nothing, which was somehow worse. When the machine finally spat him out, he didn't put his tie back on. In the consultation room, the neurologist stacked printouts. His fingers making little tents Ryan could have read as a tell if he wanted to. "We compared last month's scans with today's," the doctor said, voice quiet enough to make bad news sound like a favor. "There's progression." The word fell like a coin dropped in a deep well. You wait for the clink that tells you bottom, but it never comes. Progression. He could be anyone sitting here. A man whose body had written a sentence he hadn't authored. The doctor talked in indices and markers and next steps, and Ryan listened like he listened to earnings calls, every syllable a price. He signed what needed signing. He took the folder he would never open. Outside, the city had the audacity to glitter. Stamford lights twitched on as dusk cooled the pavement. People hustled to dinners, to trains, to lives that didn't balance on the edge of a single noun. Progression. In the car again, he told his driver to head east. No destination, just movement. Bridges unfurled. Water blackened. Skyscrapers softened into a horizon that looked kinder when seen from a distance. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the last time he'd been touched without expectation. When was the last time someone said his name and meant him, not the building? He should call Evelyn precise, unfailingly competent Evelyn, the only executive who actually told him the truth. He should call legal. He didn't call. Instead, he opened his phone and scrolled through a folder he never talked about. Resorts. Properties he technically owned but barely knew. A picture stopped him. Sunlight on turquoise. A pier that looked like a path to some life he'd forgotten he wanted. Cooper Resort, Maldives. A PR team had once called it Paradise Engineered. He'd rolled his eyes. Now he pictured silence and wind, and not being Ryan Cooper, who does not blink. Book it, he said to the driver without lifting his eyes. Tonight. Sir, flights? Book it. He packed like a man training to live out of a single pocket. Passport. Black t-shirts that passed as expensive because they were. One hardcover he wouldn't read. He sent 2 emails that would keep the machine humming, then powered everything down before the responses could clang back. At the hangar, a steward smiled the company smile. He nodded. He didn't want kindness professionally administered. He wanted the kind that wasn't scheduled. High over the dark, he stared at the cabin ceiling and admitted, for the first time, he was afraid. Not of dying, he wasn't that melodramatic. He was afraid of being seen, of the myth cracking. He imagined Lucas's smirk if word leaked. He pictured headlines that used his first name like they were on a first-name basis. Ryan battles, mystery illness amid leadership questions. He grimaced. He could control everything except the one thing that mattered. Morning was a pearl smeared on the horizon when the wheels kissed the runway. Humidity clung to him as soon as he stepped off the plane, a wet hand on the back of his neck. The resort unfolded in whites and woods and generous shadows, the kind of beautiful that pretended it wasn't trying. A manager with a rehearsed warmth introduced herself, used privacy 3 times in 2 minutes, and guided him to a villa that floated like a secret. He showered too long. He slept too little. Jet lag rummaged through his bones. By late afternoon, he was hungry and not. He decided to go somewhere public on purpose, which for him felt like a dare. The resort's signature restaurant hugged the waterline. The light did the thing Instagram loves. He took a corner table where he could watch people without being watched. He saw her before she saw him. Not because she was staged to be seen, the opposite, actually. She was doing 3 things at once, and none of them were for show. The tray she carried was too heavy for one hand, so she braced it with her hip and a laugh aimed at herself. She apologized to an elderly couple for a delay that wasn't her fault. Then, when a toddler at the next table knocked over a juice, she was there with napkins before the glass stopped rolling. He didn't know her name yet, but he noticed he had just exhaled in a way his body hadn't allowed since the elevator mirror. Not a rescue. Just air. She pivoted toward his table, caught herself, and almost recalibrated mid-stride like she realized who he was or what his face meant on magazine covers. Her eyes, brown, thoughtful, the kind that actually see you, paused a fraction of a beat on him, then refocused on the tray as if to say, "You're a person. You can wait like the others." "Good evening," she said, landing the tray with the softest clink. "Water first? Please." His voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared it. "Thank you." She poured, nodded, and was gone again, moving through the room like she'd made a private promise to make this small corner of the world work. He watched her negotiate with a wine that refused to open, grin at a honeymoon couple who had insisted on a photo, whisper to a busboy who'd clearly had a rough shift, then pivot back toward him with a notepad. "Ready to order, or still thinking?" "Still thinking," he said, realizing he hadn't read the menu. "What do you recommend?" She smiled, real smile, not the resort one. Depends. Are you in a mood to be surprised, or do you like guarantees? He almost laughed. The question, in another context, would have been a referendum on his life. Surprise me. Okay, she said, jotting something like a code. I'll bring you something that tastes like the ocean remembered how to be kind. To one cried, is that on the menu? No, she said, shrug laughing. But it should be. He wanted to ask her name, and then decided not to, not yet. He wanted this to be a thing that didn't have to define itself immediately. Instead, he watched her talk a guest down from a complaint with patience that didn't humiliate him for having one. He watched her notice the smallest discomfort's sun in someone's eyes, a chair leg that wobbled, and fix them without making a show of fixing them. He thought, that's power, the kind that doesn't need a press release. When the food came, the first bite made him swear under his breath. He had eaten in rooms people booked months to see. He'd paid for chefs to be flown across oceans. This tasted like a memory he didn't know he missed. She reappeared, reading his face like a physician checking vitals. Okay? He nodded. More than okay. Good. She wrote nothing down, but he suspected she was keeping score of victories that didn't make any KPI dashboard. If you need anything, wave at me or just think it very hard. I'm generally around. As sunset unraveled into a field of gold, Ryan realized he had not once looked at his phone. The world had not ended. The company would not burn. Lucas's smirk could wait. For the first time in months, years, he allowed the possibility that being alive could feel like this. Eating something that tasted like kindness. Watching someone do their work with grace. Not having to perform a part. He finished, and when she came with the check, he said, "You were right." About what? The ocean being kind. She tilted her head, amused. I get lucky sometimes. Is luck your niche? The word slipped out, light. She grinned at the accidental capital P professional term falling into a dinner conversation. My niche is noticing things and trying to make them better before anyone has to ask. She collected the tray. It's not glamorous, but it keeps disasters small. It's Sandri. He watched her walk away and thought about the disasters he'd kept large because he believed they proved something. He thought about the scans in a folder he'd tucked under a stack of branded stationery like the logo could keep illness in its place. He thought, what if power is noticing and making it better? Night came down soft. Somewhere, a guitarist found a melody that sounded like a confession. Ryan stood to leave, and for a second, the room tilted again. His hand shot out, found the chair back. He breathed through it. When he straightened, she was already there, not touching him, not crowding him, just close enough to be a fact. You good? She asked, quiet so it wasn't a question for anyone else. He met her eyes. Yes. Then, because it was true in a way that surprised him, now I am. Okay. A pause. See you around. He nodded and walked into the warm dark. The resort's paths lit like promises. Behind him, the restaurant returned to its rhythm. Ahead, the villa waited, the folder waited, the man in the mirror waited. He didn't know it yet, but tonight, the myth he'd worn like armor had cracked just enough for air to get in. And somewhere between the water and the music, and a woman whose niche was noticing, Ryan Cooper began to imagine a life measured by something other than how still he could keep his hands in a room full of knives. The first night always lies to you. It gives you the illusion that rest is something you can schedule. A shower at 9, a pill at 10, sleep by 10:15. Ryan learned quickly that the body is not a calendar invite. At 2:13 a.m., he was wide awake, staring at the ceiling fan ticking a metronome above him while waves rehearsed the same hymn outside. He turned his face into the pillow and tried to exhale the word the doctor had planted like a flag in a foreign country. Progression. The villa smelled faintly of cedar and ocean salt. He got up, padded barefoot to the sliding doors, and let humid air come in like an animal that had been waiting to be fed. In the darkness, the deck glowed a patient blue, lit from below by the water. You could see fish stitching silver letters across the lagoon's black page. He watched them spell a language he didn't know and imagined that if he could read it, it would say something both obvious and impossible, like, live differently. He brewed tea out of habit more than desire. The instructions on the packet said steep for 4 minutes, and because his life had been trained to obey things like timers, he obeyed. When the kettle clicked off, he poured and stood there, hands around heat, feeling a little calmer because at least this could be done right. 4 minutes could be obeyed. Biology would not be. He checked his phone at 2:28, then hated himself for it. The home screen blew up with stacked notifications like a skyline he was chained to. He scrolled without tapping stock alerts. 2 analyst notes. 1 gossip item from a business blog that used sources say like it was a gospel. There was also a message from Evelyn time-stamped 10:47 p.m. Call when ready, no urgency, but we'll need to set expectations for the week. Also, I hope you're okay. The second sentence was the reason he trusted her. She always put the human after the strategy, never the other way around. He typed and erased 3 responses, landed on, taking a few days, we'll loop back tomorrow. He didn't hit send. Tomorrow was a word that felt too heavy to pick up. Instead, he called the clinic's after-hours line, listened to a cheerful recorded voice, explained that someone would call back within 15 minutes for non-emergencies. He almost hung up. The nurse who answered knew his file without asking for a birth date. "Mr. Cooper, what are you feeling right now?" she asked, normalizing a question that in his life would have been considered a breach of protocol. He tried not to lie. "Like there's a noise under everything, like I can't catch a thought without it slipping." "That's common," she said, not minimizing, not dramatizing. "You're also jet-lagged, and your adrenaline's been high all day. Do you have the medication we sent?" "I do." "Take half," she said. "Then try to find something repetitive, a sound, a movement. Focus on it. If you can't sleep, you can still rest." He took half. He lay down to the sound of water licking wood. A memory visited from a place he didn't invite but never fully locked. The night he'd learned his mother could leave. He was 10. His father was on the road. The housekeeper had been the one to tell him in a voice that made it sound like they were moving furniture instead of lives. He remembered touching the refrigerator for cold, because the cold felt like certainty. For years afterward, when he couldn't fall asleep, he would hold a glass of ice and let the numb travel up his wrist. Tonight he touched the glass on the bedside table and realized he had, without thinking, set it there for the same reason. He smiled at the old boy he'd been, grateful and a little sad. He slept in pieces. He dreamed that the MRI machine and an orchestra pit were the same thing, a mouth that swallowed sound. He woke to a feathered light that made the room appear gentler than it had any right to be. Morning threaded itself through gauze curtains. Somewhere, a bird insisted on whatever birds insist on. He stretched and felt the tight drumhead of a back that had spent too many hours in conference chairs too expensive to be comfortable. The resort sent breakfast like an apology for all the other ways the world could be unkind. A tray with papaya laid out like gemstones, a small carafe of coffee so fragrant it made him forgive coffee for being itself, an omelet that wore herbs like confetti, a handwritten note tucked under the napkin. "Good morning, Mr. Cooper. Wishing you a day that goes softly. M." No public relations flourish, just soft. The initial must be the manager from check-in. He pictured her measured smile and then, uninvited, pictured the woman from the restaurant. He didn't know her initial. He wasn't sure why that mattered. He told himself he'd keep the day empty. He told himself he'd answer only what couldn't be ignored. And then his phone rang with the one person whose calls he always considered oxygen, Evelyn. He answered on the second buzz. "Before you start," she said, "I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just here in your ear so you remember you have a human spine, not a marble column." He exhaled a laugh. "We should trademark that." "We should," she said. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Are you alone?" "Yes." A pause that wasn't awkward. Good. Now logistics. I've told the exec team you're going dark for 48 hours. If we need to stretch that, we will. I'll be your umbrella. I've rescheduled the capital markets call. They can live without your face for a week. I already called legal and told them to stop writing memos to impress themselves. Lucas reached out. Of course he did, Ryan said, the ceiling fan repainting its clock above him. What did he say? That he can cover the earnings prep, she said, making the quotation marks audible, and that continuity would be good for investor confidence. And is a night to bo so harded could nine. Ryan saw Lucas's hand on the wheel of a car he hadn't learned to build. He pictured himself as a headline again and felt the old instinct to solve it with aggression. Tell him I said no. I already did, she said lightly. I told him you said you appreciate the offer, but you've got it, and in the meantime he should focus on the retail vertical. He used the word undermine in a sentence that was ostensibly about teamwork. I recorded it. Of course she had. It was one of the reasons he didn't drown. She built rafts where he only saw water. Evelyn, he said, letting the softness through. Thank you. You're welcome, she replied. Now this is me stepping out of role. Have you told anyone outside of me and the doctors? No. Okay, she said, not scolding. Consider telling one more person you trust. Not for optics. For the part of you that needs a second witness. The mind tries to rewrite events when they're unbearable. Don't let it isolate you. He knew she was right. He also knew that the list of people he trusted with the raw version of himself could fit in the margin of a post-it. He looked out at the water until it told him nothing. Take the day, she said. Walk. Don't think. Or think, but let the thoughts pass like boats. And Ryan? Yeah? You're not the myth, you're the man. The myth doesn't need sleep, the man does. He is Trogtown. After the call, he wandered. The resort was a geography of purposeful quiet paths, lined with frangipani and shadows that knew where to stand. The spa offered things with names he couldn't parse. Restorative rituals, guided breathwork, something involving stones. He kept moving, following wooden walkways that braided over water as clear as a kept promise. At the far end of the island, there was a patch of hammocks slung between palms, like someone had decided relaxation needed architecture. He tried one. It held him like a sentence holds meaning. He was dozing when a voice approached, carrying laughter with it until the laughter softened into a question. Care for some water? He opened his eyes and saw the woman from last night. Daylight reintroduced her. No restaurant choreography, no tray like a shield. Just a light cotton uniform and an expression that said she was accustomed to stepping gently into other people's orbits. I'm good, he said, then sat up and realized he wasn't. Actually, yes. She handed him a bottle, condensation already melting across her fingers. He noticed a hair tie around her wrist, a small bruise at the base of her thumb, the physical to-do list of someone who worked with her hands. Rough night? She asked, making it sound like a question that could be declined. He gestured at the hammock. This is me attempting to outsmart a brain that believes rest is an acquisition. She smiled. How's that ROI? Mixed results, he admitted. She tilted her head, conspiratorial. You want my unscientific recommendation? Always. When your mind starts behaving like a toddler that drank a double espresso, give it a job. Something small, physical, repetitive. Fold towels, sort shells by color. Count how many steps from here to the pier. Your mind likes feeling useful. It stops trying to run the whole company. He almost said, you have no idea, and then realized she might. Did you study psychology? He asked. No, she said. Just people. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with the economy of someone who never wasted motion. I'm Mia, by the way. The name fit somehow. Ryan, he said, and it was almost a relief to offer just the syllables without the suffixes the world had strapped to them. Nice to officially meet you, Ryan, Mia said, as if she weren't speaking to a brand. If you're up for it, there's a quiet stretch on the other side of the jetty. Less postcard, More actual ocean. It's good for doing nothing without feeling like you're supposed to be doing something. He followed because doing nothing had never been a skill he'd acquired, and because something in her tone suggested she knew how to teach it. The path narrowed, then widened to a crescent of sand, where the tide wrote secret messages and erased them before anyone could conclude they understood. They sat without negotiating distance, the kind of silence that belongs to strangers who aren't trying to impress each other. Mia picked up a shell and examined it like it had a story. "You ever notice," she said, "how broken shells are more interesting than perfect ones?" He looked at the one she held. Its edge was chipped into a new geometry. "Perfection is PR," he said, surprising himself. "Exactly," she said, pleased. "Breaks tell you where the waves have been." He turned that over like a coin. Breaks tell you where the waves have been. He thought about the places he refused to admit were fractured, because he believed leadership required seamlessness. He thought about the surgeon-like precision with which he removed personal detail from meetings, as if not having a life were a qualification. "You work mornings and nights?" he asked, realizing he'd seen her at dinner and now in sunlight. "Resort high season," she said. "Teams are thin. I pick up where it pinches." She shrugged. "It's a niche." He smiled at the way she deployed the word like an inside joke they now shared. "Noticing and fixing," he said. "Noticing and making space," she corrected gently. "Sometimes things don't need fixing. They need room. That has Billionaire." He sat with that, and the room it made. After a while, a couple wandered into their quiet and took photos of each other against the insistence of blue. Mia stood, patted sand from her calves. "I've got to clock back in," she said. "If you ever want to try something new, we run a sunset snorkel. Touristy, yes, but being face-to-face with fish has a way of shutting up the brain. It's hard to catastrophize when a parrotfish is judging you." "I'll consider it," he said, and meant it in a way that startled him. She started to go, then looked back. "Hey," she said, and in that one syllable put a hand on his shoulder without putting a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to be good at this immediately." "At what?" "Resting," she said, letting some parts be broken without calling it failure. When she was gone, he counted steps to the pier like she'd suggested. 98. Then he counted back. 98 to 0. 0 to 98. He folded and unfolded the towel. He arranged the shells by shade and secretly enjoyed the small satisfaction of order gained without conquering anything. When his phone buzzed, he ignored it. When it buzzed again, he looked. A text from Lucas. "Heard you're off-grid. Investors talk. Be careful what story you write with your absence." He felt the spike of anger that always rose in him when Lucas pretended concern and smuggled a threat under it. He typed, "Focus on your lane." He did not send it. He deleted and wrote, "Thanks for the note. I'll be back end of week." He did not send that either. He put the phone face down in the sand and let the sun heat his forearms until the urge to react cooled. Then he picked it up and sent Evelyn a single sentence. "Loop Lucas out of anything not essential." She sent back a thumbs up and a skull emoji for humor, and somehow the skull made it feel lighter. Afternoon found him at the gym, because sweat is a language executives who talk too much learn to respect. He moved slowly, listened to his body like a subordinate he was trying to hear for the first time. A trainer offered help. He declined until he didn't. "Just stretch my shoulder," he said, and let himself be instructed by someone who knew things he didn't need to pretend to know. He left 40 minutes later with muscles that hummed a quieter tune. The white noise in his skull turned down one notch. He ate lunch in his villa, a sandwich that would have offended New York but tasted like exactly enough. He napped on the deck for 17 minutes and woke feeling almost human. He took the sunset snorkel because Mia had said something about parrotfish, and he wanted to see what judgment from a fish looked like. On the boat, a handful of guests wore the nervous grin of adults about to do something that felt like a field trip. Mia was there too. Hair in a knot that made her look like she'd solved a puzzle and didn't need to talk about it. "Ever snorkeled?" she asked. "Years ago," he said. in a life that had different priorities. "Good," she said. "It'll come back." In the water, time changed shape. He put his face in and the world rearranged itself around color, not the striving kind, but the kind that exists regardless of whether you schedule it. The parrotfish did indeed look at him with the comically judgmental expression of a creature who knew he couldn't breathe here without help. A sea turtle, ghosted by, like a rumor. Coral looked like architecture designed by a child genius, excessive, precise, unnecessary in the best way. Breathing through the snorkel demanded focus. It gave his mind that job Mia had prescribed. Inhale, exhale. Watch the blue damselfish argue with the current. Hear your own breath and accept that this is the music for now. When he lifted his face, the sky had gone orange in a way that made the word orange seem like a failure of imagination. He bobbed next to the boat and laughed into his mask because it was all so much and right-sized at the same time. Back on deck, dripping and disheveled, he didn't care who saw him. Mia handed him a towel and didn't say the thing people say when they want to narrate your joy back at you. She just nodded like, "Yes, that. Thank you," he said. And he meant it so broadly that it felt like he was thanking the day for agreeing to exist. "Anytime," she said, then added, "We run a dawn swim if you're into that kind of self-punishment." "Let me master resting first," he said. She laughed. "Deal." God. Night fell, and with it, a sudden downpour, the tropical kind that erases horizons for 10 minutes and then pretends it never happened. From his villa, he watched rain pummel water and make the sea look like a million hands clapping. He ordered dinner as a test of being alive. The exact dish Mia had surprised him with. It arrived with another note. Same initial. "If the ocean is kind again, you'll know. M." He ate slowly, letting multiple kindnesses in. Butter, tomatoes that had seen sun, basil with an opinion. On impulse, he opened the folder with the scans. He laid the images out like tarot. He didn't read the shapes. He read the fact that they existed, that his body had been holding a conversation without looping him in. He could hate it. He could bargain. He could assign task forces and prepare slides. Or he could do the thing he told his teams to do when a problem felt like a god. Start with the next honest action. He texted Evelyn, "We need to set a medical leave plan. Not now. Soon. I want your help designing it on our terms." 3 dots appeared and disappeared like fireflies. Then, copy. "We'll script it in truth." He turned off the lights and left the curtains open. In the dark, he said out loud to no one and to himself, "I am not a house I keep painting. I am a man with a roof that leaks. I will fix the leak, and I will also learn to live in the sound of rain." The sentence surprised him. It also steadied him. When sleep came, it came like an animal that, if chased, runs, if invited, curls at your feet. He slept without ice, without counting, without pretending he could win the night with spreadsheets. Somewhere in the resort, Mia probably stacked glasses, wrote down a schedule, adjusted a chair so a stranger's back wouldn't hurt tomorrow. Somewhere in a different city, Lucas probably rehearsed a version of Ryan that could be toppled. Somewhere far quieter, a brain reorganized itself around the idea that not every break is a failure. Some are just maps of where the waves have been. He didn't know it yet, but the day had done something essential. It had taught him how to be a person before he resumed being a story. And in the morning, because mornings are another kind of mercy, there would be another note under the napkin, another chance to practice the job of resting, another step toward telling the truth in rooms that prefer performance. The next morning arrived like a politely knocking guest, no drama, no urgency, just light laying itself gently across the duvet and the soft percussion of waves counting time. Ryan lay there and listened to a day he hadn't yet scheduled. It felt wrong in the way that a right thing feels wrong when you've spent too long in the wrong thing. He reached for his phone, then didn't. He tried to imagine saying out loud, "I'm not checking email before breakfast." He imagined the stock price not collapsing in response. He imagined Lucas's eyebrows not arching into accusation. He let the imagined quiet hold. The tray arrived with mango that tasted like sunshine, took a tangible form, and a pot of coffee that forgave him for all the emails he'd written past midnight. Another napkin note waited under the spoon. Not the manager's careful initial this time, just a dot drawn like a tiny sun and 3 words. Today, go gently. He felt himself smile without permission. He walked the island without a destination, discovering small economies of kindness he never noticed in places that sold kindness as an add-on. Housekeeping staff retucked a sheet with care that didn't know how to be performative. A gardener trimmed a hibiscus and then spent an extra minute unasked, coaxing a startled lizard back into the shade. At the activity hut, a young man explained paddleboards to a pair of grandparents with attention that honored their courage more than their hesitation. None of these things would make a press release. They made a life. He thought of the way he'd measured performance for years, metrics that could be put on a slide, trended, color-coded. There had never been a KPI for the napkin note that reconfigured a morning. By late morning, he was back at the restaurant. He didn't mean to be. His feet had made the choice before he could vote. A different server showed him to a table near the waterline, where the waves did the polite thing of not interrupting conversation, but letting you know they were there. He wasn't looking for Mia, and he also was. He ordered the local fish, grilled, and watched sunlight scatter confetti on the lagoon. "Good to see you again," said a voice he recognized the way you recognize a melody from last summer, familiar enough to smile at, surprising enough to feel like a gift. Mia, daylight rendered her without the stage lights of dinner service. No heavy tray today. A small notebook in one hand, a pencil with a bitten eraser in the other, a tiny coffee stain at the edge of her sleeve like a signature. "You too," he said, and then realized how formal that sounded. "I mean, the parrotfish have been talking about you." Her eyebrows hopped. "All curses or some compliments?" "Mostly professional jealousy," he said. "They say you're an underappreciated force in reef diplomacy." She laughed. "I'll take it." She nodded toward the water. "You picked a quieter hour. The boats nap then, they don't churn up the edges. You know the schedule of the sea." "I know the schedule of the tourists," she said. "The sea reminds me who's actually in charge." The food arrived. He ate with the focus of someone practicing presence like a foreign language he'd always wanted to be fluent in, and never had time to learn. Bite. Breathe. Be here. The fish flaked under his fork like butter had a work ethic. "Can I ask you something?" he said when Mia returned to check on him. "Where do you learn to notice like you do?" "It's a skill. A niche. We have the nexters." She looked out at the break, where the water pretended it might become sky. "I didn't learn it on purpose," she said. "I grew up in a house where one person's mood was the weather. You learn early to scan. Is the storm coming? Do I hide the glass things? Do I make a joke? It's a survival skill. Later I learned you can repurpose survival skills into service if you don't want to live in a bunker." He felt the sentence settle into a place in him that recognized the terrain. "Repurpose into service," he repeated, not to flatter, but to remember. She shrugged, mild. "Noticing isn't always rescuing," she added. "Sometimes it's just witnessing. People act different when they can tell they've been seen without being measured." He thought of earnings calls of analysts who asked questions to hear their names in recordings, of his own polished answers that said everything except what he actually believed. He thought of Evelyn's voice telling him to find a second witness. Witness, a word that turned from legalese into a kind of sacrament if you held it in your mouth long enough. "How long have you been here?" he asked. 2 years, she said. "It was supposed to be 6 months. Then 6 turned into 12, turned into island time. Before this," she made a face that indicated multiple false starts, "a little of everything. Hospitality is my backbone. The world is the rest. I like when jobs are maps more than ladders. Maps more than ladders." Another sentence he wanted to steal for a deck he would maybe never make again. "How do you decide when to leave?" he asked. "Maybe of the island, maybe of anything that isn't working, but pays you in predictability." "When the noticing stops being kind," she said, and then, reading his slight confusion, When I start looking for what's wrong before I look for what's true. That's how I know I'm tired. He wanted to ask her 100 more questions because he was greedy for languages he didn't speak yet. He also didn't want to turn her into a TED Talk. He went quiet, grateful for a companion who didn't make silence awkward. She topped off his water and left without handcuffing the moment to a Hallmark lesson. He was paying when a strip of weather swaggered in from the horizon, the kind of rain that doesn't consult you. Guests left their coffees and scarves and plans on tables and ran inside with the delighted chaos of people who don't live with thunderstorms on a first-name basis. In the shuffle, a man in a wrinkled linen shirt, maybe American, maybe British, beaten smooth by decades abroad, barked at a young busboy. "I've been waiting 20 minutes, he said, inflating the number like a balloon animal and then handing it over with the satisfaction of a magician producing a rabbit you didn't ask for. "This isn't service. This is an experiment in incompetence." The boy's face did the thing faces do when they're not paid enough to be adults in front of strangers who only know how to swing. He opened his mouth to apologize for a thing he didn't do, and Ryan felt the old throb at the base of his skull that meant protect or explode. He tensed, already selecting a CEO voice that could immobilize a bully without raising its volume. He didn't stand. Mia was there before the next sentence could make more damage. Not to block the blow, she didn't center herself in the man's theater. She turned to the busboy first, touched the boy's elbow lightly, and said, "I see you. Step into the prep station for a second. I've got this." The boy blinked, startled, and obeyed. Then she shifted half a degree and looked at the customer with an attention that wasn't submission. "Thank you for waiting," she said. Words calm but not empty. "The rain surprised us. We'll prioritize your table. If you'd prefer to finish inside away from the wind, I'll seat you now and bring your order myself in less than 5 minutes. Your choice." The man, mid-performance, had to choose between a fight and food. He frowned, realizing all the scaffolding he'd built to justify his temper had just been quietly dismantled. He grunted something that tried to be disdain and settled into being a surrender. "Inside," he said, and followed her. Ryan watched the weather do what it wanted. He watched a room restabilize around small mercies. He watched Mia return and slip the busboy a glance so brief you'd miss it if you weren't trained in scanning. "You're okay." He realized he was measuring the world in micro-rescues, and it was a currency he wanted to earn. "Did you ever want to build your own place?" he asked when she passed near again, his voice light so it didn't feel like a test. "Once," she said, not stopping, "and maybe again. But I'll know it's time when the place I'm in stops needing what I have to give." He should have been the one to leave, then let a good line stand and not overwork it. But he found himself following as she headed toward the bar, drawn by something that had nothing to do with attraction in the simple sense and everything to do with relief. Here was a person who did not require him to be a role to earn attention. Here was a room that allowed the human before the headline. At the bar, a woman in a bright dress wiped at a ring on the counter with the targeted intensity of someone who'd ruin a day with the wrong word. Mia approached gently. "Spill or storm?" she asked. The woman laughed, startled out of her orbit. "Both," she said. "Our flight got delayed twice. We're missing our connection tomorrow. My husband is trying to reschedule, and I'm trying to pretend this is fine." "Do you want it to be fine?" Mia asked. "I want it to not be my job," the woman said, instantly, as if she hadn't known that until it was spoken. Mia nodded. "I can make it not your job for 20 minutes. What do you need in your hand to start believing your own story again?" The woman blinked. "A drink?" "I meant object," Mia said, smiling. "But I like where your mind is." She set a glass of water down and then a paper and pen. "Write what you want to happen in 3 lines. You don't have to believe it. Just write it." The woman hesitated, then scribbled. "We make it home. The dog is okay. We remember this as a story, not a catastrophe." She pushed the paper back, embarrassed by her own sincerity. "Perfect," Mia said. "I'll go bother the concierge about flights. You finish your water. We'll check on the dog." Ryan stood there, an accidental witness to an unspectacular miracle. No violin swelled. No branded content filmed. A woman's day tilted 2 degrees toward livable because someone offered the dignity of practical hope. He thought about the non-profit pitches that crossed his desk, weekly decks heavy with impact metrics and transformation curves. He thought about how much change actually began like this. One person accounting for another's weather. He wanted to say something to Mia about it, about the way she redefined service as a conversation with reality, not its denial. Instead, for reasons that would later become clear even to him, he offered a confession. "I'm bad at asking for help," he said when she returned to the pass-through, as if they were mid-conversation and not on opposite sides of 1,000 unshared biographies. Mia looked at him as if he'd said, "I sometimes breathe oxygen. Most people who are good at moving mountains are terrible at letting someone else carry a cup," she said. He smiled at the accuracy. "In my head, help is an invoice." "In my head, help is rent," she replied lightly. "We all live in each other's buildings. We pay with whatever we've got. And what do I have?" He surprised himself with the question, as if she were a mirror that told the truth kindly. "Today?" she considered, then tilted her chin toward the storm loafing over the water. "You've got time. Which is expensive. Pay with that." He wanted to say, "I don't have it." He wanted to say, "It's on back order." He wanted to say, "Someone else owns it." He heard Evelyn's voice. "You're the man, not the myth," he said. "Okay." By afternoon, the rain thinned into a drizzle that decided to be curtain instead of wall. The light went gauzy. He took the long way back to his villa, stopped at the tiny library where paperbacks came to retire and travelers came to confess what they actually liked to read when no one was grading their taste. He thumbed a book that had more sand than pages left. On the flyleaf, someone had written, "If you find me, pause." He did. The day gathered him into a slowness that no meeting could have justified. He sat on the villa steps and watched crabs commit to their weird sideways sprint with unapologetic purpose. A heron performed its ancient decision-making ritual, chose a spot, and went still, a master class in both patience and suddenness. He watched a child on a nearby deck show his mother a shell with the pride of a museum donor. He watched clouds convene, hold a summit, disband. His phone buzzed 3 times in quick succession, the rhythm of an emergency that often turned out to be impatience in a nice suit. He let it sit. After a minute, maybe 2, he picked it up and checked the screen with the same tenderness you reserve for a sleeping child. One message from Evelyn. "I chased off 2 reporters. Legals being legal. I told them no comment and invented a comment to satisfy their sport. Eat something good." One from his father's oldest friend, who never texted, just sent a photo of a lighthouse with the caption, "They don't move. They also don't leave the storm to the boats." And one from an unknown number. "Mr. Cooper, this is Dr. Hardiman. Not urgent. When you're ready, I have a colleague I trust for a second opinion." The kindness buried in the sequencing almost made him cry. He wrote back to Evelyn with a heart he would not have allowed himself 2 weeks ago, and to Dr. Hardiman with "end of week." He wrote nothing to the lighthouse, letting the image do its work. At dusk, he returned to the restaurant because apparently his nervous system had decided to map its days around a series of small, predictable lights. The hostess led him to a table he would have avoided in another life, close enough to others that he might accidentally overhear a story and therefore be implicated in someone else's humanity. Wind flirted with the votive candle, made it dance. Mia wasn't his server tonight, which was probably good for the integrity of the service and his ability to pretend he had boundaries. A man with a kind mustache and a scar on his knuckle took his order, but late in the meal, Mia passed by with a tray and tilted her head like a question. He lifted his glass in a small salute. She stopped. "Do you ever get tired of beautiful?" he asked, and immediately wondered if that was a ridiculous question to ask someone who worked where people saved for a year to be. "Sure," she said. "Some days beauty is loud. It shouts over the ordinary until you forget ordinary is why you can hear yourself think. That's why I like the behind-scenes laundry, storeroom, the walk-in. It smells like onions and effort. It makes the view mean something. He had built a life out of views. He had often outsourced the walk-in to other people's resumes. Onions and effort, he said, smiling. Not a bad perfume. Not a bestseller either, she said. But it keeps you honest. He ate dessert because he didn't trust the part of him that always deferred sweetness to a future he couldn't guarantee. The rain had made the air so clear the stars felt closer, less like decoration and more like witnesses you could swear in. He lingered because leaving meant returning to a room where the folder might ask to be opened again. On his way out, he saw Mia carry a tray to the table of the man from the storm. She set down a bowl, then did something unexpected. She crouched. So her eyes were level with the smallest person at the table, a girl with braids and a scowl that said she had inherited a weather pattern and was trying to decide whether to give it back. This, Mia said to her, is the best thing because it's crunchy and soft at the same time. You never have to choose. Want to hear the crunch first? She broke the crust with a spoon and let the girl listen. The girl smiled, an embarrassed, unpracticed curl that made Ryan think about inherited storms and the possibility of editing weather in a single meal. He didn't make meaning out of it. He let it exist without translation. He went back to his villa and did the small boring things that make a life feel like a life, washed his face, folded a shirt with attention, put a glass of water within reach, turned off 3 switches, turned on 1 lamp. He didn't open the folder. He wrote a single sentence on the hotel stationery he usually ignored. Some days are built out of mercies too small to brag about. He left the page on the table like an offering to the morning. He slept better than the night before and worse than he hoped. Progression was still a word with sharp corners, but when he dreamed, the orchestra pit had turned back into a room with chairs, and the music wasn't a mouth, it was just sound. He woke to a dark that was audibly preparing to become light. A quiet preceded dawn the way a breath precedes a sentence. He walked to the far side of the island, where even the resort's eagerness gave way to a raw edge. He found a bench that had decided to retire and leaned back against its wisdom. He breathed, he counted. He thought of Mia's advice and let a job appear. Watch the horizon change color without trying to name each shade. He did it badly and then better. When the sun finally made its specific argument for another day, he felt a decision arrive without fanfare. He would tell someone else the truth. Not a board, not a legal counsel, not a headline. He would take the part of him that trembled and place it in the hands of a person whose niche was noticing and making space. He turned back toward the villas as guests began their migrations, runners negotiating their private treaties with discipline, honeymooners discovering how mornings change when you wake up on purpose, staff syncing a dozen invisible choreographies. He found Mia near the storeroom, counting napkins. Of course. Onions and effort. Do you have 5 minutes? He asked, the way a person asks for water. For a walk-in or a walk? She countered, smiling. Both, he said, and for the first time since the glass table in the boardroom had become a shoreline, Ryan Cooper felt ready to let someone else hold a cup while he tried to move a mountain by naming it. The walk-in wasn't a place for speeches. It was a place for onions and effort and the slow, honest cold that kept delicate things from spoiling. Mia pushed the heavy door with her shoulder and held it so it wouldn't slam. Fluorescent light hummed. The air bit Ryan's forearms. He welcomed the bite. It made his thoughts line up like bottles on a shelf. 5 minutes, she said, glancing at the clipboard wedged beside the door. Unless someone needs basil, then we'll have to share the stage with herbs. Fair, he said, managing a smile that wasn't armor. They stood between crates of produce and metal pans wrapped in cling film, the space tight enough to make honesty efficient. Mia rested her palm on a box labeled CITRUS like she needed something living to touch while the cold did its work. She did not fill the quiet. She waited the way you wait at a shoreline, confident that when the next wave arrives, you'll recognize its shape. I'm not here as a guest, he he said, surprising himself with the sentence his mouth chose. Not only. I came because my life shifted. A diagnosis. Saying it aloud made the word less like a meteor and more like a meteorite, still heavy but touchable. It's not catastrophic today. It could be later. It demands attention. Mia nodded once, not flinching, not sympathizing in the performative way that turns a human into a project. Thank you for telling me, she said. How can this room help right now? This room? The room you carry between your ears, she said. Sometimes you need cold to keep panic from spoiling everything. He breathed. The hum of the fan, the faint scent of dill and lemons, the measured order of things that could be controlled, labels, dates, FIFO. He found a sentence he trusted. I'm good at performing certainty, he said. I'm less good at telling the truth while the machine is running. Machines can run with a loose panel for a while, she said. But the rattle drives everyone mad. Tightening one screw can save the engine. He half laughed. You talk like you've fixed a few engines. I've fixed a lot of screws, she said. The engines usually belong to someone else. A prep cook eased the door open with an apology face, grabbed a bin of mint, and retreated. Silence returned with the dignity of a colleague who knows its value. I didn't tell you to be helped, he admitted, although I probably need that. I told you because Evelyn said I needed a second witness. I think she meant a friend. I don't know how to ask for that without making it transactional. Name it without invoices, Mia said gently. Start small. What's the smallest true thing you haven't said today? He considered. I'm scared of disappearing, he said. Not dying, disappearing. Being replaced by a version of me that's either myth or pity. Mia's eyes softened but didn't turn him into glass. You're not a poster, she said. Your life leaves fingerprints in boring places. Posters don't do that. People do. The door thumped again. A hand reached in for parsley, withdrew. The universe was clearly content to let groceries share stage with confession. What does help look like to you? She asked. He focused on the labels tomato concase divided by 09 to 29 divided by PM shift, like each sticker was a signpost. A practice, he said after a moment. Something I can do when the noise is loud. Okay. Mia's voice found a practical cadence. Here's a walk-in practice. When you feel the noise rising, put your hands on something that will be here tomorrow because someone cared for it today. Then speak one sentence that doesn't perform just reports. I'm afraid. I'm hungry. I need to sit. Then choose one action that pays rent to your future self. Drink water. Write one line. Tell Evelyn one thing she doesn't have to guess. He let the steps assemble inside him. Hands on something real. One sentence that reports. One small rent payment. I can do that, he said. And he meant it. They stepped back into the heat. It met them like an old habit. The kitchen noise, knives, low banter, the short arguments of tickets reminded him that life everywhere else had not been waiting on his revelation. He felt relieved. Outside, the world did its slow afternoon exhale. Tourists napped. Water pretended to be harmless. He and Mia walked the path without speaking. When they reached the service gate, she tapped the wooden post twice, like a ritual, and peeled toward the back office. I'm on shift until 10, she said. If you need another 5-minute fridge, come steal me. Have to do. Thank you. He said, the kind that isn't performative, the kind you feel in your ribs. Alone on the deck, he paid rent. A glass of water. A single line on hotel stationery. Report, don't perform, and a text to Evelyn. I told someone else. It helped. The typing dots bubbled, disappeared, returned. Good, she replied. Also, Lucas is circling comms. I can handle. You rest. He should have put the phone down. He didn't. A notification from a business site slid across the screen. Cooper Group CEO takes pauses strategy shake up. He felt the old engine rattle. He put both palms on the rail, wood warm under his skin. I'm angry, he said aloud, feeling ridiculous and then less so. He drank the rest of the water. He wrote a second line. Anger is a kind of energy. Aim it, don't wear it. He called Evelyn. Draft me a sentence for the street, he said. Plain. No euphemisms. She didn't hesitate. We run on teams, not myths. I'm getting care. The company is doing its job. He closed his eyes. Yes, send it. Already on its way, she said. By the way, our HR head wants to talk about the leave policy you mentioned. She's got a scaffold. Loop me at high level, he said. Let her build. Evelyn paused, the way she did when pivoting from logistics to human. Eat something, she added. Preferably not just the concept of resilience. He smiled. I have lemons and basil in my spiritual walk-in. Go make a salad, she said, and hung up. Dinner found him less hungry for food than for proof that the world still behaved like itself. The restaurant delivered both. An older couple argued about whether the moon rose from left or right with the tenderness of people who had been disagreeing recreationally for 50 years. A teenager recorded the water for a future self who would need evidence that she had once been light. The mustached server taught a trainee how to balance a tray on a laugh instead of a clenched jaw. Mia appeared mid-service with a 2-finger wave. I see you, keep breathing, he did. Halfway through the meal, his phone buzzed with a message from an unsaved number he nevertheless knew. Lucas. We need to align before the call. Investors asking pointed questions. Optics matter. No greeting, no how are you, just stage directions. Ryan felt the old choreography pulling at his tendons. He typed, deleted, breathed, paid rent. One reporting sentence to himself, I'm tempted to perform. Then he wrote to Lucas, We'll align at 9 tomorrow with Evelyn looped. Please send your questions in advance. He hit send before he could rewrite it into either apology or aggression. Good, Mia murmured when she passed, reading his postures like sheet music. Can you actually see the text through the back of my skull? He asked. Your shoulders typed it, she said. The rest of you pressed send. He laughed, the wave breaking exactly where it needed to. How do you not absorb everyone else's weather? I do, she said. I just learned to let it go through the laundry. Hot wash, hang dry, don't wear it twice, she said. The dessert menu tried to seduce him with language. He said yes to something with citrus because the walk-in had named it. It tasted like a small choir. He left early, on purpose, like a man practicing stopping before the tank went red. The next morning, he met Evelyn on video. She looked like clarity. 2-part plan, she said, crisp. First, the team protocol. Second, the culture shift. I've got drafts for both. Also, PR sent a paragraph with journey and resilience, and somehow authenticity twice. I vetoed. I owe you 2 coffees, he said. You owe me a bakery, she corrected. Now, Lucas, he wants to co-lead the call. No, Ryan said, and didn't explain. Offer him the opening on retail updates. He can shine where he actually knows the Sunday. Evelyn's mouth twitched. Consider it done. What do you need from me between now and Wheels Up? He considered the horizon behind the camera. Tell me one thing that's true and unflattering. Why, you get sentimental and try to save everyone when you're scared, she said instantly. Sometimes saving looks like building a system that doesn't need your cape. Copy, he said, grateful she never let affection erode accuracy. Hold me to it on the call. Gladly, she said. And Ryan? Yeah? You're doing the human part right, she said. The rest is admin. After they hung up, he stood on the jetty and let the morning decide what color to be. Tour boats revved at a respectful distance. A staff radio crackled with code for ordinary miracles deliveries on time, ice machine sulking, birthday cake surprise restored after a kitchen mishap. Mia joined him, an apple in one hand, a pen behind her ear. How's the machine? She asked. Less rattly, he said. We tightened a screw. Good. Want to learn the apple trick? There's an apple trick? There's always an apple trick. She handed him a second apple and showed him how to slice around the core with a plastic knife you'd trust a nervous child with. 4 clean wedges. Waste minimized. Satisfaction maximized. Every system gets kinder when the cuts are smarter, she said. He bit into a wedge. It tasted like the obvious truth told at the right temperature. I'll be back in the city tomorrow, he said, briefly. The meeting, the call, then back here for a bit. And she nodded, as if he'd said, I'll be entering and leaving weather. Please keep the roof in sight. I'll save you a space in the walk-in, she said. And a paragraph in the manual, he added. I want you to write the chapter called Maps. I thought you were writing that one. I can contribute, he said. But you know where the footpaths are. She squinted at the horizon, weighing the request like a tray. Okay, she said finally. I'll write it if you promise not to edit out the parts that make management itchy. Deal, he said, knowing he would itch and still leave the sentences alone. They stood a while, eating apples like it was a sacrament for people with to-do lists. He told her one more true thing before he left. Something small, something that paid rent. I'm scared of doing the call well and then forgetting how to live like this. She nodded. No sermon. Then write yourself a recipe, she said, practical as oregano. Like a real one. Ingredients. Steps. Put walk-in on the prep list. He smiled. Yes, chef. As he walked back toward the villa to pack, he felt the curve of his life again. Not a sharp turn, not a cinematic pivot, just a long bend navigated at a speed the body could handle. The myth was still there, hovering like an old billboard on a road he no longer took. The man was here, counting steps to the pier, naming the weather out loud, learning the apple trick, carrying a small cold room inside him for when the heat tried to rewrite the truth. Tomorrow would be loud. Today was a rehearsal for living when the applause wasn't the point. He rehearsed well. The city didn't wait for him to be ready. Cities never do. They run on the arithmetic of momentum. Add noise, subtract silence, multiply urgency, divide attention. When Ryan's car slid into the underground garage of Cooper Group's headquarters, it felt like returning to a language he spoke fluently and no longer wanted to dream in. Evelyn met him in the private elevator, tablet in one hand, a paper cup in the other. Decaf, she said, passing it over like a treaty. Your neurologist's note is my scripture this week. I'm trying to be obedient, he said, and almost meant it. Good, she replied. We've got a tight runway. Earnings call tomorrow. Leadership sync in 20. One leak already making the rounds. What leak? She tilted the tablet toward him. A screenshot from an industry newsletter bloomed a paragraph built out of insinuation. Sources suggest internal debate at Cooper Group as CEO Ryan Cooper considers stepping back amid mysterious health issue. Brother Lucas Cooper seen courting key investors. Power play underway? It was the kind of paragraph that didn't need to be true to be useful. Ryan felt the rattle in the engine. He closed his eyes, put both palms against the cool elevator railing, and paid rent. I'm angry, he said under his breath, and I'm not going to wear it. He took a breath that belonged to him and opened his eyes. We'll write our story, he said. In numbers and sentences, Evelyn agreed. I've got both. On 25, the conference room was already populated by the choreography of a company that knows how to look competent. Comms sat with their laptops open like shields. Legal wore the expression of people who can smell liability across a state line. Finance had charts lined up like soldiers who didn't sign up for this war but would march anyway. Lucas arrived last, a man who understood the value of timing. Brother, Lucas said, performing warmth that didn't survive at room temperature. Big day. Every day is big if you squint, Ryan replied lightly, refusing the framing. Saturday Evelyn set the agenda like a runway she'd already cleared. We are not litigating rumors, she began. We are designing clarity. Ryan will open tomorrow's call with a brief statement, then numbers, then Q&A. Internally, we'll publish the revised executive operating plan. Externally, we'll offer one paragraph that neither invites pity nor lies for comfort. Legal lifted a pen. We recommend avoiding specific medical terminology, he said. Also avoid leave of absence unless it's formalized. We prefer periodic treatment windows tied to a defined protocol. Approved, Ryan said. We built the protocol, we'll use it. Finance clicked to a slide. Forecast remains intact. Retail vertical outperformed. Hospitality held steady in markets with currency headwinds. Lucas cleared his throat at the word retail like he wanted to be called to stage. He wasn't. We've modeled sensitivity scenarios for a slower back half and a paused M&A pipeline. Guidance holds within range. Comms pulled up wording. Our draft opening. Cooper Group delivered solid results this quarter, reflecting the strength of our teams and our strategy. I'm also beginning a period of medical treatment that will require me to step back at times. We have robust systems, and our leadership team is structured to execute without interruption. No journey, no resilience, Evelyn added, dry. Just nouns and verbs that don't wear makeup. Ryan nodded. Good. Add one line. We run on teams, not myths. Then stop. Do not invite a confessional. Lucas lifted his hands. Optics matter, he said. Investors will wonder who's driving. Perhaps we should consider me co-leading the call. Continuity. Continuity is following the plan, Ryan said, voice calm, not cold. You'll lead the retail update. That's where you add real value. We lift from the thing that's true, not the thing that photographs well. A flicker in Lucas's eyes, disappointment, then a calculation. As you wish, he said. They moved into Q&A prep. Evelyn had seeded tough questions in a document titled Reality. Ryan liked the way the word looked on the screen, a reminder that good governance is just an expensive way of saying, tell the truth and do it on time. What about the newsletter? Comms asked. Do we engage? We ignore the theater and do the work, Ryan said. If pressed, we answer with our paragraph and our policy. Nothing more. The meeting dismounted without spectacle. That was intentional. Not every room had to be a storm. Outside, a Manhattan weather pattern convulsed between almost summer and already fall. He stood by the glass and watched a flag struggle to decide who it wanted to be in the wind. He didn't plan to see Mia's name flash on his screen that afternoon. He also hadn't planned for the walk-in to become a portable room he could step into from 1,000 miles away. Can I send you a picture? Her text read. It's about maps. Send, he wrote. The photo arrived. A page torn from a server's notebook. At the top, in block letters, maps. Under it, a messy grid of boxes with arrows and scratch-outs. Guests, weather, staffing, mood menu. In the margin, when in doubt, start with the thing that has a pulse. At the bottom, a line. Not all detours are disasters. He felt something in him settle that the skyline couldn't. I needed that, he typed. Good, she wrote back. Also your write without makeup rule works on manuals too. Then write it that way, he sent. No corporate toothpaste. Permission noted, came the reply. Go do your numbers, pay rent first. He put his hand on the glass, the city's version of cold. I'm anxious, he murmured. He poured water, he wrote one line. Do not audition for the myth. Then he went to do the work. The leak did not stay politely contained. They never do. An investor texted a director who texted a journalist who tweeted a question disguised as concern. Before the story inflated into a weather system, Evelyn intercepted the front edge with a line so clean it cut the wind. We're on track. We built for teams. See you tomorrow. That night, sleep was thinner than he wanted. He woke twice and counted backward. He put his palm on the cool nightstand and inhaled until the heart in his throat remembered where it belonged. He dreamed of a turtle nest roped off with a sign, "Please let the future hatch." In the dream he had to move one pebble so the hatchlings could find the water. He didn't carry them, he made room. Morning came wearing steel. He dressed like a man who had decided to look like himself. No tie. Crisp shirt. The kind of jacket whose competence comes from construction, not brand. On the way to the call, he stopped in the break room. 2 assistants were trying to load an office dishwasher with the elaborate resentment of people who had given too much to machines. "May I?" he asked, and restacked mugs so that nothing chipped. It was the sort of intervention that lives beneath the dignity of a CEO and above the dignity of a martyr. It felt correct. Start with the thing that has a pulse, he remembered. Mugs don't, people do. He walked into the studio conference room. Lights, a camera, a mic that could make lies sound reasonable and truth sound expensive. Evelyn stood beside the podium. "We good?" she asked. "We're human," he said. "Best we've got," she replied, and handed him a single index card. On it, she'd written in neat block letters, "You owe no performance to fear." The call started. The operator did the ritual. He spoke the paragraph they'd agreed on, and for once, he didn't try to sand off reality with charisma. He told them what they delivered. He told them what they were building. He said the line about teams and myths, not like a slogan but like a mirror. He passed to finance. He passed to Lucas for retail. Lucas made his numbers sing. The street likes a good chorus. Q&A began. Analysts tried to tug the conversation toward the leak. He kept it tethered to results, protocol, and the work. Halfway through, a familiar voice, an analyst he respected because she didn't weaponize curiosity, asked, "How do you plan to maintain culture during your treatment windows?" He did not open a deck. He opened a door. "By measuring what matters daily," he said. "Useful days for customers and staff. Predictable schedules. Fewer heroic saves, more ordinary competence. Apprenticeships at every property, built by the people who do the work. We've already started. We'll report against it internally because what you measure is what you protect." A pause. Not hostile. Real. "That's not the language we usually hear on calls like this," the analyst said. "I know," he replied. "We built too many sentences to calm each other down. I'm tired of those. We're trying truth." Evelyn's eyebrows made a small yes. The call ended without fireworks. The stock ticked, wobbled, steadied the market version of a human trying on a new habit and deciding not to panic about it. After, in the corridor, Lucas caught up. "You threaded a needle," he said. "Compliment, warning, both." "I told the truth with a plan attached," Ryan replied. "It's cheaper than spin in the long run." "You're making things soft," Lucas said. The word an accusation aimed at everything that had ever saved Ryan from becoming a statue. "I'm making things strong," Ryan corrected. "Soft is a PR tone. Strength is a schedule that keeps people from breaking." They stood there a second, 2 men who had learned to spar where hugs should have taught them better. Lucas looked away first. "Investors will call me," he said. "Tell them the numbers," Ryan said. "And tell them we're building rooms where the lights stay on because everyone knows where the switch is." "Poetry," Lucas said, half sneer, half respect. "Manuals," Ryan said. "Written by the people who flip the switch." Lucas nodded, puzzled by a universe that seemed to be rewriting the rules without consulting him. "We'll see," he said, and peeled off. By late afternoon, the building exhaled its daily exhaustion, the kind of fatigue that comes from holding your breath in a public square. Ryan went to the small internal studio, where HR had set up a camera for a 5-minute video intended for staff only. No music, no cuts, just a human who had more power than he ought to and less control than he'd pretended. He looked at the lens like it was a person who deserved accuracy. "We did the call," he said. "We told the truth. I'll be in treatment windows on and off. We built a plan that doesn't make anyone a hero. If you need me, you'll get me maybe slower, definitely more honest. If you need help, ask. If you see something that breaks quietly, fix it loudly enough that we can thank you. We're launching apprenticeships. If you want to teach, raise your hand. If you want to learn, you're already qualified. We measure useful days. Today was one." He sent the file. Then he packed a small bag, because cities don't bless you for staying when the ocean has laid out a workbench with your name on it. On the tarmac, his phone buzzed. A message from Mia drafted the map's chapter intro. Want the first line? Always, he typed. It came. Maps don't tell you who to be. They tell you where you are. Start there. Then move in a direction you'd be proud to describe to someone who cleans your rooms. He read it twice, then a third time. Print it, he wrote. On onion-scented paper, she replied. Safe flight. His run. Up in the dark, the city fell away, and the ocean made its slow argument. He closed his eyes and pictured the walk-in. Hands on something cold. One reporting sentence. One small rent payment. He whispered into the cabin's hum, I'm relieved, and I'm tired. He drank water. He wrote a line in the notes app he usually abused for deals. Do not audition for the myth. When the wheels touched down on the island runway, relief arrived disguised as humidity. He stepped into it. The resort absorbed him without asking for a mask. On his villa table, a napkin waited, inked with a familiar hand. Welcome back. Today's map is small on purpose. M. He laughed quiet, grateful. He was not saved. He was not finished. He was, at last, moving in a direction he could describe without flinching. It took him 2 days to admit the idea had teeth. The thought had arrived disguised as a question on the jetty, do you want to learn the apple trick? And then grew into a plan the way a seed insists on becoming itself. Apprenticeships, manuals written by the people who live the work, useful days measured honestly. The big columns were there. What he needed was a pilot that looked like a life, not a press conference. He found Mia near the laundry hut with a stack of aprons balanced on her hip like a second torso. I want to try something, he said, and the words came out like a request instead of a decree. This, already, was progress. Try or build? She asked, half teasing, half diagnostic. Build, then try, he said. A small cohort here, 2 months, paid, cross-trained in the jobs tourists never Instagram. We pair each apprentice with a mentor who actually does the job, not a manager who's forgotten the weight of a tray. Mia adjusted the aprons. Why here? Because here keeps reminding me what's real, he said. Because I need to prove to myself, not the street, that this isn't just a sentence I like to hear in my mouth. She looked at him for a long second, then nodded. Okay, but we set the terms in ordinary language. No excellence frameworks. We write the acceptance letter like we're talking to a cousin. Deal, he said. Also one more thing. The manual. The Onion and Effort Bible? She said, smiling. Yes, he replied. We start writing it this week. Tiny chapters, practical tone. How to load a dishwasher without cursing your future self. What to do when a guest's weather follows you into the stockroom. We credit authors on the page. We pay for the writing time. If legal wants to edit, they can write their own chapter and sign their names. You mean it? She asked, scanning his face for the inevitable corporate gravity that drags good intentions back to earth. I mean it, he said, and the certainty wasn't performance. It was a vow. They convened a little circle behind the restaurant at a table that had retired from prime-time service to become a planning desk. The mustached server, the busboy from the storm day, the pastry chef who could make meringue in high humidity like a magician, the head housekeeper who had solved more operational crises with a needle and thread than any consultant with a deck. Mia opened her notebook and wrote, Maps, at the top. Then drew a box around it, like she was framing a tiny stage. Here are the rules, she said. Say exactly what you wish someone had told you your first week. No sparkle, no shame. You can cuss, we'll translate later. If you use the word resilience, you owe the room a cookie. The pastry chef grinned. I accept these terms. Ryan sat one chair back, hands under the table so he wouldn't unconsciously start conducting. He listened as the head housekeeper described how to teach a new hire to see a room the way a guest will live in it, not just problem spots but small mercies. A glass within reach, a towel hung at a height that respects someone shorter, A note card that says, "If you can't sleep, we left an extra blanket in the drawer." The mustached server contributed a diagram for traffic flow on nights when storms push everyone inside. "Make triangles, not lines," he said, sketching arrows. "Lines make anger. Triangles make eye contact." The busboy cleared his throat. "Can I write the part about what to do when a grown-up treats you like furniture?" he asked, trying to sound casual and not quite pulling it off. "Please," Mia said, her voice a bench you could sit on. "And make it a list. Lists are dignity for brains on fire." Ryan watched an operating system come alive in real time, no software, no licenses, just humans converting their weather into maps other people could read. He felt a lightness he wouldn't call joy, because joy was loud today. This was relief, quiet and specific. He wasn't the only one carrying the switch. That night he took the sunset snorkel again as if the ocean were a colleague he needed to check in with. Underwater, the world reminded him it didn't care what humans called themselves. A ray winged past like a shadow that had learned choreography. When he surfaced, Mia was sitting on the edge of the boat, feet in the water, looking like a person who had just taught 3 strangers how to breathe, and was giving herself a minute to remember that she needed to as well. "How do you keep doing this without breaking?" he asked when he climbed aboard. "I don't keep," she said. "I pause. A lot. Behind the storeroom door. In the laundry, sometimes in the walk-in. I tell myself one true sentence. I pay rent, and I let myself be seen by exactly 2 people, no more, or it turns into a play." He nodded. "I told the board," he said. "We built the plan. Evelyn is the hinge. We did the call." Saying it to her mattered in a way that felt newly built in him. The instinct to let someone witness your arc, not to validate it, but to anchor it. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like a window got opened," he said. "Like I'm not bracing against smoke anymore." "Good," she said. "Windows make rooms honest. Thank you for watching." They cruised back in with the last pinks flattening into gray. On the dock, staff passed crates hand to hand with the kind of rhythm that makes you want to protect it from management language. A little girl from the linen team's family waited with a book and waved at everyone like they were all her cousins. The day folded itself into a shape that didn't require retelling to be real. Back at the villa, he wrote another line on the hotel stationery because this had become a practice he trusted. "Don't make the manual a monument. Make it a sink that drains." He left the page on the table for morning to judge. The midpoint, he realized, isn't a drum roll. It's a quiet agreement. I will stop auditioning for the myth. I will start practicing the life. The pilot cohort began on a Monday that chose to be merciful. They showed up early, because showing up early is the first way you tell a future it can count on you. 6 apprentices, a mix of ages and accents and weather. They sat in a circle of chairs that had decided to be a classroom. Mia started, because she should. "Welcome," she said. "Today your job is to be new on purpose. Tomorrow your job will be to be useful with a little less wobble. Both are honorable." Ryan introduced himself last, because he should. "I'm Ryan," he said. "No titles. I own the building on paper. These people keep it standing." The head housekeeper taught the first hour how to make a bed so it holds a person, not just a body. The mustached server taught tray balance, made a joke out of gravity that wasn't at the apprentice's expense. The pastry chef taught sugar as weather how to read the humidity and not punish yourself for physics. Mia taught a module she wrote the night before called "Walk-ins and Other Rooms You Can Borrow When You Can't Breathe." It lasted 13 minutes. It changed the room's oxygen. At lunch, they ate standing up in the staff courtyard because chairs had been claimed by people who needed them more. Ryan listened to story fragments: rent due, visas pending, a mother's appointment, a nephew's science project, a prayer that had nothing to do with religion and everything to do with remembering how to ask. He considered how much strategy lived in this courtyard unnoticed, how much intelligence gets misnamed as soft skills when it's actually the architecture of keeping a place from breaking. In the afternoon, he sat with a maintenance lead who had learned to make an ancient generator behave with a screwdriver and 3 swear words. "Write that chapter," Ryan said, pointing at the generator with respect. "Title it, How to Talk to Old Machines Without Making Them Feel Useless." He stumbled. "Can I call it Please Don't Die Today?" the lead asked. "Yes," Ryan said, laughing. "We'll translate later." The day ended without a ribbon cutting. It ended with people tired in the right way. That night, after most guests had let go of being awake, Mia knocked on the villa door with a folder. On the front, in her block letters, Pilot Week 1 Notes. Inside, small pages dense with specifics. What worked, what didn't, who glowed, who needed a different angle. A draft from the busboy. When someone yells, remember you are not the weather. Step 1. Blink. Step 2. Breathe. Step 3. Repeat their request in a quieter sentence so they hear themselves. If they keep yelling, wave me over. I'm good at being a wall. Ryan read and felt a startled warmth. This was the thing. Not the press cycle, not the call, not even the plan. This, a manual of mercies, written by hands that smelled like chlorine and citrus and work. "You look like someone who discovered there's a kitchen behind the stage," Mia said from the doorway. "There is," he said, "and it's the only reason the show goes on." She nodded. "Eat?" she asked, lifting a paper bag he hadn't seen. Inside, food that tasted like someone had decided your continued existence was worth cooking for. They ate on the deck floor because chairs felt too formal for the day. He didn't make a speech. He didn't promise the moon. He said, "Thank you for being my second witness," and left it there. She tapped the folder. "Just keep adding pages," she said. "That's the work." He slept that night like a person who had stopped trying to convince himself he deserved rest and had started to practice it. The crash didn't announce itself with a siren. It arrived like a poorly written email, abrupt, avoidable, timed to ruin a morning you'd planned to protect. At 9:13 a.m., while he was mid-sentence with the cohort about why triangles beat lines, his vision skittered. The floor did its elevator trick. The sentence, which had been about chairs, became about air. Mia was there before anyone else registered the tilt. "Walk in," she said, not as a suggestion. The apprentices parted like a rehearsal had finally met its scene. He leaned on her shoulder for exactly 3 steps, and then on his own 2 feet for the next 10, pride intact because she allowed it. In the cold, he counted labels until the hum in his skull synced with the hum in the fan. "I'm here," he said aloud. "Report not performance. I'm dizzy. I need water." The words, practiced, made a bridge. Mia put a bottle in his hand. "Blink slow," she said, "the way you tell a parachute what to do in case the sky forgets. You're okay to pause. We'll pick up the triangles." "How do I?" He nodded, focused on the citrus box, because oranges are stubborn and he needed that energy. The episode passed like a small storm that knows it isn't the season to be dramatic. He breathed, paid rent. "I need a chair," he said, and sat on an upturned crate, letting the cold reset the edges. Outside, the day tried to carry on with its original plot. Inside, he texted Evelyn, "Small episode. I'm managing. Don't escalate." The dots came and went, then, "Copy. Proud of you. Call the clinic anyway so we're not improvising." He called. He described. He listened. "Adjust your dosage," said a voice that had learned how to make medical advice land like an instruction manual instead of doom. "Hydrate, rest, avoid adrenaline spikes." He made a face at the last one like a teenager told to respect bedtime. He agreed anyway. When he stepped back out, the apprentices were running a drill Mia had devised. Handoff language. Words to say when your brain is oatmeal. She'd written on the whiteboard. "I've got you handing to May now. I'm 2 steps behind Alex, your lead. I'm not the best person for this request, but I know who is." Ryan listened, humbled by how much heroism could be replaced by choreography if you admitted you were human. By noon, he felt mostly himself. He took lunch alone, not out of avoidance but because quiet had become a vitamin. The manual pages multiplied. The pastry chef turned in humidity and hope, which began. Hope is not a strategy for meringue. A thermometer is. The maintenance lead submitted, please don't die today, talking to old machine, in which step 1 was compliment its stubbornness. Then the weather changed. Not sky Wi-Fi. His phone lit with a string of notifications that looked like a fire alarm had learned to text. A gossip account, one of the ones that make a living gorging on the failures of people who mistake attention for care, had posted a photo. Ryan on the dock the night after the call, cheeks sunburned into humanity, shirt open at the throat, laughing at something that had probably been harmless and private. The caption, sources say CEO at Ryan Cooper is vacationing hard while investors worry. Mystery illness or messaging? Within minutes, the account posted a second slide, a cropped image from the back-of-house camera that shouldn't have made it outside Ryan and Mia in the walk-in. The shot was misleading by design. Her hand near his elbow as he steadied, eyes level. The cold room's proximity turned into insinuation. The caption did the rest. Who's the mystery woman? Staffer? Source says unprofessional closeness. For a breath, the old myth grabbed the wheel. Rage, shame, calculation, the instinct to retaliate or to make himself smaller. He put both hands on the table. Report, he told himself. Don't perform. He said it out loud for good measure. I'm angry. I want to hide. I also know what's true. Mia appeared at the door with a face like a forecast. I saw, she said. It's a storm. We know which windows to close. He nodded. This is on me, he said. I'll handle the public side. I also won't let you bleed for my weather. She half smiled. I work in a hurricane alley, she said. I don't bleed. I stack sandbags. Evelyn called before he could. We've got a leak in the back-of-house camera system, she said, voice like a clean blade. I'm already on it. Separate contractor. We'll put them in a jar. As for the post, we can either starve it or replace it with food. Food, he said. Small, specific, true. No indignation. Done, she replied. Drafting now. I'm in treatment windows. I'm also working with our team in the field to build apprenticeships and staff-written manuals. The photo is from a training walkthrough. The woman is a staff lead. Respect our staff. Stop harassing them. Add, we run on teams, not myths, he said. Then post it to the company account, not mine, and ask the resort to release a staff statement that reiterates our back-of-house no-camera policy. We'll own that failure and fix it. Already calling, she said. How are you? Angry, he said. Hydrated. Have that August. Good, she said. Drink again. He hung up and looked at Mia. I can move you off the front line, he said. If this brings heat you don't need. She shook her head. Running is a performance, she said. I'll work my shift. I'll write 2 chapters tonight, back-of-house boundaries, and, when you become clickbait, a field guide. You're not obligated, he said, hating that his world made people write manuals for surviving him. I'm not obligated, she agreed. I'm choosing. Choice is a boundary. The apprentices watched with the wide eyes of people learning that adulthood involves an endless series of weather systems you didn't order. The head housekeeper stepped forward. We'll adjust, she said. Guests will be nosier. We'll redirect. We'll put a sign on the walk-in. This room is for lettuce and feelings. Paparazzi will be fed to the blender. A ripple of laughter reset the room's shoulders. All afternoon, the staff did what a good team does under pressure. They kept the triangle moving. The mustached server became a decoy, making jokes loud enough to draw attention away from the apprentices. The maintenance lead accidentally parked a cart in front of the corridor where the back-of-house camera had been mounted, then made a ceremony of removing the camera with a flourish that let the staff cheer without turning the moment into theater for guests. Evelyn's post went live within the hour. Plain black text on a white background from the company account. Comments flooded in, as the internet behaves when fed clarity. Some decency, some bile, a lot of noise. A second post followed from the resort's official page, an apology for the camera placement, a commitment to privacy, a note that staff are humans, not props, a promise to audit the contractor that had installed the system years ago. The internet moved on faster than the hurt in the people who had to live with it. That's the part you plan for with care, not content. Toward evening, another front rolled in. Lucas. A text, then a call. Ryan answered because avoidance is just procrastinated pain. "We need to control this," Lucas said without preamble. "It looks like people doing the work," Ryan cut in. "We posted, 'We're fixing the camera policy. Do not pour gasoline on this to make your case look bright.'" "My case," Lucas said, wounded pride in a tuxedo. "I'm protecting the company." "Protect it by respecting the staff," Ryan said. "By the way, the apprenticeships you dislike will do more for margins than your fourth store concept. We keep people, we reduce churn, we get better work. Investors will learn a new math." Silence. Then a low, reluctant, "The call went well yesterday. His day." He saw though have to bold and tour sofing. "It did," Ryan said, letting the armistice be heard. "Come see the pilot, or don't. But don't weaponize me against the people who make this place worth owning." Lucas didn't answer that. "Watch your optics," he said finally, and hung up like a man who had been denied his favorite trick. After service, the staff gathered in the courtyard for an unscheduled debrief. Mia facilitated with the deftness of someone who understood group weather. "What do we need tonight?" she asked. "And what can wait until tomorrow?" "Pair me with someone for the first hour tomorrow," the busboy said. "So if a guest tries to fish for gossip, I'm not alone." "Done," Mia said. "What else?" "Whoa, Selv, Dotto's way." "Signs for the back hallway," the mustached server offered. "Polite and funny." "Write 3, Mia said. "We'll pick the one that makes us laugh harder." "The manual needs a section on cameras," the head housekeeper said. "It'll have one by midnight," Mia answered. Short and blunt. Ryan didn't speak. He passed around bottles of water and a plate of still warm rolls sent by the pastry chef with a note that said, "Some days carbs are policy." When they'd finished, he stepped into the quiet created by a team that had just kept the floor level under a storm. "I'm sorry," he said. "My presence brings weather sometimes. I will keep paying for better roofs." "To this. We're not paper," the maintenance lead said, pragmatic affection in his voice. "We don't melt. Fix the cameras. Keep the apprenticeships. Feed people who yell to someone else." They dispersed like a tide going out. The night reclaimed its old job. On the jetty, under a sky that had the nerve to be spectacular, while the internet clenched its jaw, Ryan and Mia stood in their now familiar, almost silence. He felt the day on his body like flour after bread. "I hate that you were dragged into it," he said finally. "I was already in it," she replied. "That's what being alive with other people is. You can't outsource the storm. You can share the tarps." "Hast." He laughed, surprised at the image, grateful for it. Was there a part of today that felt like a win? She thought. The apprentices wrote their first paragraphs while the world yelled, she said. They didn't wait for perfect weather to start making maps. He looked at the dark water, at the soft glow where bioluminescence made its old bargain with motion. "Tomorrow we keep going," he said. "Tomorrow," she agreed. "Start with the thing that has a pulse." He slept that night because the body, after a day of being honest, often lets you. The world did not fold itself into a neat lesson. The crisis did not dissolve because someone wrote a brave post. What changed was smaller and more important. The team trusted the room they'd built together. The manual gained 2 chapters that would outlast a news cycle. A CEO discovered that telling the truth and paying rent was a muscle that held even under cameras. In the morning, a new note under the napkin. "We can't stop storms. We can keep the lights on. M." He put it in the folder with the others, not as a talisman but as a tool. Then walked to the staff courtyard where the apprentices were already early. Notebooks open, ready to build a day that would be useful. The internet storm lost interest before the bruises did. Ryan kept the pilot tight. 6 apprentices, 4 mentors, 1 promise no heroics, only habits. The manual fattened with field wisdom. Triangles over lines. When you become clickbait, back of house boundaries. Please don't die today. Old machines. Metrics quietly smiled. Fewer dropped tickets, steadier turnover, 1 fewer resignation in housekeeping, the kind of numbers that never trend on social, but keep lights on. A late-night call from the clinic reframed the clock. Treatment needed to begin sooner and run in tighter cycles. Not catastrophe, commitment. He told Evelyn first. Then he did the walk-in practice. Hands on steel. 1 reporting sentence, I'm scared and I'm ready. 1 rent payment he scheduled the first block, no dithering. With Mia on the dock, he named what this meant. A handover that wasn't abandonment. She answered by tapping the crate twice. Systems, not capes. He gathered the cohort and spoke in short, ordinary words. I'll be out more. We built for it. You'll have support. Apprenticeships continue. Manuals keep growing. Your maps are the point. No violins, no myth. The mustached server raised a hand. Then our chapter today is shifts when the boss isn't magic. Laughter broke tension. Work resumed. Lucas came to see for himself. He arrived, skeptical, left, conflicted. Watching a busboy de-escalate a guest using the manual's blink, breathe, repeat script did more than 10 memos. On the way out he muttered, almost to the tiles, margins hate churn. It was the closest he'd come to yes. At sunset, staff and apprentices ate standing pasta from clamshells, passing around a pen to initial the pages they'd authored. Ownership, literal. Ryan didn't toast. He stapled the new chapters and wrote a title page in block letters. Useful days. That night, another napkin waited. You don't owe brilliance, you owe breakfast. M. He slept like a person who believed morning would show up, even if he didn't audition for it. The end wasn't a symbol. It was a clean handoff. Treatment days arrived. He kept them. Evelyn ran the machine without theatrics. The board adopted the leave protocol company-wide. HR published the apprenticeship framework with 1 rule in bold. Manual authors get paid and credited. The street adjusted the way weather does moodily, then inevitably. Ryan returned between cycles, like tide, lighter where certainty had unlatched. The pilot graduated. 6 apprentices placed 2 in housekeeping, 1 in maintenance, 1 cross-trained for night audit, 2 choosing to stay and teach. The manual shipped internally as a living doc. Chapter 1 opened the only way it should. Maps start where your feet are. Lucas asked for coffee, and, this time, listened. I thought strength was a pose, he admitted. Turns out it's a schedule. They didn't fix childhood. They agreed on ladders over theater. On a humid evening, the resort gathered for a small ceremony no guest noticed. Staff read lines they'd written. The busboy, now a mentor, closed his section softly. We are not the storm. We are the roof and the kitchen and the list on the fridge. Ryan stood back, unnecessary in the best sense, and felt the rightness of being one person in a room that worked. Later, on the jetty, bioluminescence stitched blue handwriting beneath their feet. Mia nudged him. Call it, she said. He looked at the dark, at the manual in his hands, at a company learning to measure success by the sum of useful days. We built rooms where light gets in, he said, and where it stays when I step out. Good map, she replied. He slid a page of hotel stationery into the manual's front pocket, the last line he'd need for a while. Power is a window. Keep it clean. Share the view. The ocean answered in its one reliable language. Rhythm, and the future, unglamorous and generous, kept hatching one small, ordinary mercy at a time.